Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined each and every day by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. Tell us where you're checking in from, what you're drinking. Get your questions in. We are 52 days away from kickoff, slowly but surely getting there. And, man, almost in the game. And speaking of being in the game, guys, I want to kick it over to this new commercial here featuring Texas Arts Manning.
All right, here we go. Let's go gun far, Simon right nasty, Z Riz, F Whirly Bird, Alert Scarecrow. All right, use a little cadence here. All right, you ready?
Are you sure about this?
Absolutely. I mean, this is the best way to focus on football, right? So get your eyes on the safety. Be vocal out there.
Yes, Coach. I mean, Uncle E.
It's better.
Green 18. Green 18. Omaha. It's a hunt.
Ready. All right, there he is. There he is. Now.
Boom.
Touchdown. That's why you're in the game.
EA Sports. I'm in the game.
Whew.
What do you think, guys? Blake, what is that impressions up to on that? Is that over 2 million yet?
Oh, gosh, I'm sure it has to be. I'll look right now, but it has to be close. Let's see. It is 1.6 million. Pretty close. So
it's going over 2.
Obviously going to be in the new NCAA college football game after a lot of people didn't think he was going to be, guys. So that's, big news for Texas fans, but good press there for the Longhorns.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, Quinn Ewers is a starting quarterback. He should be a first-round pick with a really good season, right? But things like that kind of go to the importance of the Arch Manning recruitment for the University of Texas as a whole, that they're going to have the Manning family as part of essentially the University of Texas. I'm not sure Peyton will be doing any commercials Texas related. I think Eli's more the one to do that, but just the importance in what all that encompasses, that recruitment, and having Arch Manning at the University of Texas. I still don't know if the average person's going to fully grasp what I think this is going to mean the next 2 or 3 years after this year.
I can tell you one of the issues there that's giving them difficulty grasping it, Jerry, is that the tidal wave in recruiting hasn't occurred as a result of it, right? Some people thought that might be play a role, and I do think it'll play a role ultimately. They just got to get to where he's on the field, and they can see it. Some of them saw it, I thought, at the spring game, including DeCorian Moore, but that didn't work out. Jerry, talking about a receiver, there's a bunch of receiver news going on. You were down in Jacksonville yesterday, made it all the way back on I-10. I mean, he drove all the way on I-10 yesterday from Jacksonville back to Houston. What did you see out of Jamie French yesterday, the wide receiver there? Any other? I think Kelshawn Johnson pushed his announcement back, we believe, at least his coach said he did. What's going on?
Yeah, nothing on Jamie as a player. I mean, that was a workout. I think kind of fully known what he is and who he is at this point. Look, he's going to visit, more than likely going to officially visit Georgia the last weekend of July. I know Texas fans are like, oh no, hands overhead, eyes, and all that, but I'm not sure. I think Texas is in a really good spot for Jamie French. Just got to stay the course, and he announces August 30th. That decision date won't change. That is his mom's birthday. That's a very important day for him to announce his decision. I think Texas is in a really good spot there. Kelshawn Johnson bumped back his announcement. Obviously, Hitchcock took the worst part of Hurricane Beryl in those areas, and me being back in Friendswood, it's pretty rough in some spots here. Not a lot of electricity. There's no electricity, no power, no internet at Hitchcock High School. So they've had to bump that back a week. It'll be sometime in the next week for that decision. Texas A&M has been the favorite there, but I think he's conflicted more than he's been in the last 2 or 3 days. It'll be interesting to see which way that goes. Sarkisian, Chris Jackson have been in contact multiple times with Kelshawn and his family, as have Mike Elko and Holman Wiggins. But it'll be interesting to see where that goes with his decision as it keeps getting put off because of Mother Nature, to be clear. Because Hitchcock wanted to have this announcement the latest today because the head coach of Hitchcock goes out of the country on vacation with his family for about a week, 10 days coming up here. So they wanted to have this out of the way. but obviously Hurricane Burrow's bumped that back. It'll be interesting to see what he does. A&M's felt pretty good about it, but I think Texas has made it much more difficult on him in the last 2 or 3 days. Tanook Hines will announce on the 15th, Caney, Dalen McCutcheon on the 13th. I think Texas would take a commitment, accept a commitment from Kelshawn, Dalen McCutcheon, or Tanook Hines right now, based on the intel I've gathered. And Texas will also, they haven't thrown in the towel on some guys. I'll say that. We'll have more on that in the future. And I'm not talking about the Corian Moore.
Good stuff there. Hey, before we move on to the next thing, I want to say Kevin Todd here says, good morning. Today is my 56th birthday. I'm an old guy drinking cheap black coffee in Thackerville, Oklahoma. Hook 'em. Happy birthday to you, Kevin.
Happy birthday, Kevin.
I missed one, so I want to answer Corey J's question on receiver. Can Texas pick up any interest in Andrew Marsh? I don't think Texas would go that direction.
He did come in for a visit, but Texas didn't really pursue further.
No.
I think that Hines, Johnson, and McCutcheon may be a tad ahead of him.
Yeah,
on the board.
Yeah. Then somebody asked about LL, or I think it was LL, asked about Myron Charles. That's something that would have to play out into the season. Texas won't give up on those guys. They'll stay in contact. We know that from Steve Sarkisian, since he's got the Texas and that staff's got the Texas. They will stay in contact with those guys, and they will fight until signing day on the guys they really think are their A-plus players. And Myron Charles is one of those. So we'll have to see if Texas can make any headway there.
So is Josiah Sharma, same thing.
Yeah. Antoine has actually a funny question there about Hitchcock. Kelshawn is a midterm. I don't think Lloyd Jones is. Hitchcock has their best player back, who's a lower mid-major Division I prospect. So Hitchcock's in the running for another state title, but they did lose a lot defensively off that team.
There you go. All right. Before we move on, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell folks out there about Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm.
Yeah, I actually spoke to Adam yesterday. Adam's doing good. He's back in the office. Been out for a week or so on his own vacation. But Adam is your lawyer of choice. He and his firm have been helping injured Texans for 20-plus years. If you've been injured in a truck wreck, car wreck, ATV accident, a motorcycle, what have you, and think you might be due compensation, you're going to want to call Adam and his firm and get a consultation to see if it's something you want to go forward with. It's no strings attached consultation. Again, LoweyLawFirm.com. Thanks, Adam, for your sponsorship of On Texas Football.
Okay, guys. Bobby, one thing that people love to hear about when it comes to you is your thoughts on Brett Yormark. And yesterday, they had some interesting comments, to say the least. And Yormark said, I will not stop until we're the #1 conference in America. So my question to you guys is, will the Big 12 ever be the #1 conference in America, or is Brett Yormark just never stopping?
It's not going to be called the Big 12. It'll be called the All-State something or another, first of all. So let's start with that. He is the ultimate carnival barker. I don't know how else to say that. He'll say whatever to try to get some focus on Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Iowa State. Tell me which blue blood you heard in there to make them the best conference in America. I didn't hear one. So Arizona State, that sounds like a blue blood to me. I mean, what have they been to, like one bowl game in the last 10 years? I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but he's a little bit of a fool. And the more people write about him, it's whatever. Let him say what he wants to say. And I think he gives those fans some hope for the future. I read that, the SEC doesn't want Florida State and Clemson, and now they're going to go to the Big 12 instead. Who cares? I mean, it doesn't change what the SEC is or what the Big 10 is. They're still going to have the bigger schools. It helps TCU, I guess. It helps, Colorado. It's not the same, and they don't get it. They just don't get it. And you can't make it. You can pound on their head a little bit all you want, but they're never going to get it. It's a lot of no offense to some of my Aggie friends out there, but it's a lot like a lot of Aggies. You can knock them on the head and say, who's in there? But no one's home. I mean, that's who they are.
They are going to be the best basketball conference in the country, hands down.
Woohoo!
But when hands down, but when Kansas leaves, it's over. The second Kansas bolts, it's over for the Big 12, period.
Where are they going to go?
Big
Ten told them no. The Big Ten told them no. The SEC doesn't want them. I mean, look,
I bet when the Big Ten expands again, when it goes to 24, they'll be out the door to the Big Ten.
How many? I talked to Chris Del Conte about this 4 months ago. How many basketball games at the university home basketball games equal one home football game from a viewership perspective? All this other stuff that the University of Texas is concerned with, that TV networks are concerned with. How many basketball games? 47.
Yeah.
47 for one football game. So they can be the best. I mean, look, they can be the best. The SEC can be the best baseball conference. The Big 12 can be the best football. Or the best basketball conference. Football is what rules the roost when it comes to money in college sports, period. Yep. The rest is bragging rights. I will grant you that because we love other sports on this show. But it's football and everybody else in college sports, period.
Hey, here's an interesting question, guys. This from Jordan. And Jordan asked, do you guys see conference titles being basically meaningless now that we have the expanded playoffs?
No, because of seeding for the playoffs as of right now.
I agree with Jerry a little bit because you don't have to play that first round, right? There's no play in if you win the conference.
That's very valuable right now.
It is. You're right. Especially late in the year, you get another week to heal up. But it's approaching that area where it's less meaningful.
Yeah.
Not that it wasn't less meaningful last year. I mean, was it really any big deal that Texas won the Big 12? The only thing that you wanted them to do was to get into the playoffs. How they got there was kind of meaningless. I mean, it certainly helped them get in the playoffs. They wouldn't have if they had.
Yeah, I think it was extremely valuable last year for Texas because I think the playoff committee looked at Texas peaking at the right time because of that performance against Oklahoma State. I think without that game, does Texas still get in? Probably, but the way that it was valuable to Texas last year, especially with the Florida State situation, because Florida State still went undefeated. If Texas hadn't had a Big 12 championship game and Alabama hadn't beat Georgia, where are things? I mean, but moving forward, when the playoff goes to 16 teams, conference championship games, I think, are meaningless.
That's the piece, right? If they move to 16 instead of 12 where everybody gets a bye, what's the purpose of them?
Yeah.
Other than just, I guess, getting in or not. I didn't mean to say that the championship last year that Texas won was unimportant or inconsequential. I certainly didn't mean to say that. What I was trying to say was, at the end of the day, if Texas would have been 12-0 and lost that game, yet still got into the national championship race, I would have been just as satisfied, right? I mean, you have to. The big thing here for me was trying to get into the playoffs. It wasn't the goal wasn't winning the Big 12, in my opinion. It was getting into the playoffs and trying to play for a national title. That's the ultimate goal of Texas. Not saying that SEC or Big 12 championships aren't going to be important, et cetera. They are. It's just which one is more important to me.
My question is, will they go away when it goes to 16 teams?
Money, baby.
I know, but but if they take away the conference championship games, you can almost roll into the playoffs, the 16-team playoff, a little bit earlier.
Money.
Yeah, I know.
The SEC is not going to give up The Big Ten is not going to give up the conference championship games. I could see the ACC and Big 12 doing that because they're not going to make much money off of it. But SEC, Big Ten, I just don't see them doing that. You think they're not excited about the opportunity of Michigan, Ohio State Part 2 now that they're doing away with divisions in that conference? They're very excited about that.
Hey, Adam, we saw that you put in a super chat here, but there was no question or comment attached to it. So if you will put that in, we will make sure to get to it. And guys, we also have a super chat from Slick Rick here that we need to get to. And Slick Rick says we need to reevaluate our recruiting strategy. With the season A&M had, there should be absolute no reason why they are ahead of Texas in recruiting. Y'all's thought?
I think two thoughts on that. One, let's see how things play out the rest of the way. I do think they'll cast a wider net at defensive line recruiting in the future. You have to in the SEC. But two, A&M gets the first-year bump with a new head coach. A&M, look, and I've said this before, and I 100% will believe this until college sports landscape changes. With NIL, Texas and Texas A&M should recruit top 10 classes, and when the playoffs expanded to 16 teams, they should be in the playoff 3 out of every 4 years. I know some Texas fans will be like, A&M, no, but dude, they're positioned to be a factor if they hire the right coach. Bottom line, they have the money, they have the in-state talent, they have the ability to recruit in the Southeast region. They're actually showing real signs of life in California in this class. So it's a first-year bump for Elko, for sure. Then they're positioned to recruit really well. Now, let's see how things finish up come December. But if we see A&M and Texas should both recruit top 8 level classes, top 9 level classes, year in, year out at this point with NIL structure college football. No reason not to.
And then Adam did come back with his question here. So, Adam, thank you for the super chat. And he asked, do you think Coach Choice would have better success recruiting higher profile wide receivers / offensive linemen?
Definitely not offensive line. No, I think he's where he needs to be. He's a former running back, NFL running back. I think Chris Jackson was a wide receiver in college, wide receiver in NFL camps, and wide receiver prep guy for the NFL draft, then got into coaching and coaching the NFL. I think Tashard Choice is situated right where he needs to be. And so I think he's right where he needs to be. So my answer is no on that. I think the position, look, every guy that coaches a position, that doesn't mean they played that position, but it's certainly helpful, or that 20-year resume of recruiting that position.
I got to say something, not about Choice, but about the previous question about changing recruiting strategy. To Jerry's point, I think they're going to have to look at it a little bit, especially if they change their signing day up to July next year.
Yeah.
So that's going to have to change. I do think defensive tackle recruiting may have to change a little bit as far as widening the net. Overall strategy, I don't think Steve Sarkisian is going to change the lid. There's no reason to. You guys jumping off a bridge right now need to have a bungee cord attached, because I'm just telling you right now, Texas is currently at 14 nationally in the on-3 team rankings. A&M is at 8, okay? And for you guys saying, well, they're way ahead of Texas. Okay, they're 6 spots ahead. A&M has 18 commitments. Texas has 13.
Yeah.
If you think Texas is going to stay at 13, and look, let it be. It's going to happen. You just got to get there. Okay. So don't, like I said, jump off the bridge. Just make sure you have a bungee cord, please, so you can come back to us when actually things start falling in the Longhorns' direction, because they will inevitably. Sarkisian's too good a recruiter. Texas is too attractive an option. Period.
Yeah.
And a follow-up to that, Jay Lee says, I think it's a little early right now, but when would be a fair time for us to start worrying? If we are still outside the top 15, say maybe the start of the season?
Texas was outside that last year at the start of the season. Now they had Brandon Baker, Ryan Wingo, Kobe Black. Those recruitments went on into the season. Then you had the flip of Wardell Mack, the flip of Xavier Filsaime, the flip of Ty Anthony Smith, the late signing day win of Aaron Butler. Texas was outside that last year going into the season, or right around that area. So they're pretty much the same spot they were now. I will say that to say this: Brandon Baker, Kobe Black, and Ryan Wingo, those level recruitments, uncommitted players, aren't going to be in play for Texas this year at that time. So they need to move up a little bit more. They need to probably be in that, for those that care about the recruiting rankings, 8, 9, 10 range starting the season, which I think they have a start of the season. Look, Jamie French commits August 30th, right? I mean, there's going to be more guys before that. But right before that first game you kick off of the season, you need to be in that 8, 9, 10 area, and then kind of watch what Texas does, how Sark's recruited the rest of the way. The problem is, again, with the recruiting ranking this year, I think I'm big on the recruiting rankings because we have a graphic, Blake, that I think is coming up next. It's very important to stack top 5, top 7 level classes. Michigan won a national title last year without having stacked top 5, 7 level classes 4 or 5 years in a row. I think we lost Blake for a second there. But their development was such a high level, and they hit on a lot of those high 3-star defensive line types and prospect types. But it's valuable to have that level of recruiting. For sure, there's no argument that can be made. It's not valuable. But then you also have to fill your role. You fill your needs. And even if Texas is ranked 5, 6, 7 at the end of this recruiting cycle right now, it's going to be hard for them to fill the needs at a couple of positions.
All right. We got some questions coming in. I'm going to take over for Blake a little bit. Not sure what happened there. I'm sure he'll be back with us. Oh,
he's back.
As soon as I speak, there he is. Happened. That was our weird. Fearless leader. How you doing, Blake?
All right. I'm going to bring up that graphic now if y'all are ready for it, because that's what I was actually getting ready to do. And as you can see here, you got your average number of players drafted to the left, average rank of recruiting class down there at the bottom. And Texas is in that they recruit well, but struggle to get players drafted area, along with Oregon, A&M. A&M's right there with Texas and Tennessee. And then 4 schools at the top there, they recruit elite and send players to the draft: Ohio State, Georgia, LSU, and Michigan. Then a whole bunch of schools, including OU, in between there, a lot of SEC schools as well. But curious to get y'all's thoughts on that.
Well, look at the very top right.
Yeah.
Don't miss that one.
Oh, Alabama. Yeah, it's so far up there, I didn't even see it.
They've been in a different world under Nick Saban. Look, and this includes, by the way, Texas with 11 picks last year. So where was Texas before last year, before Steve Sarkisian came in? They were down below Tennessee, probably, where Tennessee is on that list.
I think what'll be interesting is you're going to see, assuming everything stays, Dan Lanning stays at Oregon, Steve Sarkisian stays at Texas, you're going to see Texas and Oregon ascend on a list like this in the next 3 years. You're going to see Clemson slowly drop on this list, in my opinion. That there's going to be some changes. Alabama will drop. We'll see how much. Kalen DeBoer is doing really well. Watch out for that guy with top 5 classes, by the way. And then, Michigan, new coaching staff. Are they going to continue at the pace they were at without Harbaugh and all that change? It's going to be interesting to look at this in 2, 3, 4 years, because Texas, the portal, Bobby, also the portal changes this. And the portal may be we almost have to look at this differently in a way, because Texas, the Blue Bloods who use the portal correctly, those teams are going to skyrocket, I think, in these draft picks. And some of those guys are going to be 1-year players from other colleges. So they're not all going to be recruited players. I mean, you look at, I don't know where Florida State is on this list. I'm sure they're in that little mosh pit there from 4 to 5 area. But Florida State, 9 of their 10 draftees last year were transfers. So it's going to be interesting to take look back at this in the future. High school recruits and development versus what you get out of the portal for the 1 or 2 year guys, and then they go on to the draft.
Well, I would say this. Texas had 11 guys drafted, right? 3 of them were transfer portals.
Mm-hmm.
A.D. Mitchell, Ryan Watts, and Keelan Robinson.
Yeah.
I just think that where Texas is headed, if you were to do a recency trend on this, Jerry, Texas would be up there with those other guys because of the late draft picks they've had in the last. I mean, they had good draft picks last year too. So I feel like Texas is headed in the right direction, and I do believe that's a credit to Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, and
this will be dated this time next year,
right? And you look what happens. So this year, Texas, I think, will have 10 to 12 guys drafted again. How many of those guys will be transfer guys? Quinn Ewers, Isaiah Bond, right? Matthew Golden, potentially. So Trey Moore, potentially. So it's interesting. Is that number going to slowly creep up under Steve Sarkisian as well? I think the high school development and that is going to continue on pace. Is the portal actually going to creep up a little bit with Steve Sarkisian at Texas? I think it's something interesting to watch, maybe more so than I thought it would 2 years ago.
Hope so. I have no problem with it. So
yeah.
Use whatever. I'm not Dabo Sweeney.
No.
Not, going to die on the vine, for my beliefs here. I think that Texas has to use any and all manners which they can get to improve their football team. I'm a big believer in that. It's the law of the land. It's the rules. Go abide by them and kick butt, coach. And that's what Steve Sarkisian's doing. So I have no problem with that being a focal point, one of the focal points of Steve Sarkisian.
This is Rhett has a good point. Do you really even count a portal guy? Well, that's what I think will be interesting. I think in the future, all these graphics, I think that's a great graphic to look at because it's going to be interesting to look at Alabama. They'll slide a little bit. I don't think they're going to slide as much as people think, though. And then Michigan, what do they do with Sherrone Moore over time here after Harbaugh? Because that was a lot of losses there for one university in 1 year. What are they going to do moving forward? Those two and Clemson, because Dabo's the outlier in college football right now. But the way we're going to look at this in the future, we're going to need different graphics. We're going to have the high school graphic and the portal graphic because giving credit where credit's due, Florida State would be at the top of the portal graphic right now. They were probably playing for a national championship last year, but for a late injury to a quarterback who was a transfer, by the way. That they would be at the top of the portal list. And where would that list be doesn't include the portal guys? I think it's going to be interesting to look at and a lot of fun in future years.
There's even nuances within that, Jerry. A.D. Mitchell, you could say he was truly mostly developed by Georgia, right? Spent 2 years at Georgia, just 1 year at Texas. But you can't tell me that Ryan Watts, who spent 2 years at Texas, or 2.5 years at Texas, wasn't more developed by Texas. Same with Keelan Robinson, who spent 3 years at Texas.
Yeah.
After, Quinn Ewers, is he truly a portal guy? He only spent a semester at Ohio State.
Right.
So he was developed by Texas. So even within the portal categorization, there's going to be complexity and different pieces. This is a good one from Phil McIntosh, guys. Is there any organizational reason Texas has lost some recruits, or has this just been a bad mix of a year? Has this been any organizational reason Texas has lost some recruits? I think that's a fair question. There's been some turnover at that spot. Billy Glasscock left to go be the GM at the University of Mississippi or at Ole Miss. Brandon Harris was elevated. John Michael Jones was elevated. But organizational reason, I'm not so sure. I think that Steve Sarkisian didn't change much with how he's recruited. So I don't see the blame going back on somebody new. Sark has always been a stronger finisher than he has been in June and July. Just the way it is. Now, the question I have And I think what many fans rightfully ask, did too many big names get away too soon in the month of July? Last year, a lot was left on the hook. I mean, you had Colin Simmons, Ryan Wingo, Brandon Baker, all those guys left to make decisions. You still have some big name guys left out there for Texas. Don't get me wrong. But did too many get choose a different school in July on Texas this year? Is there an organizational reason for that? I don't know, as much as we'd have to just wait and see what occurred. You know, that's you can't make all these judgments without with imperfect information and final numbers. If this happens and we're looking back in December, late November, and knowing things aren't going to go Texas's way, that's different. That's different.
Before we move on, guys, Jerry, I'm going to let you tell folks out there about the great people at Manscaped.
Well, it seems like every time Brett Yormark opens his mouth, somebody needs to take a 5.0 to this guy. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about its sizzle alert. This summer, let the only thing be smoking at your barbecue be the grill, not your grooming game. Get ready for the ultimate cookout season with Manscaped. Whether you're flipping burgers or cannonballing into the pool, make sure your meat looks neat with the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. Fire up your grooming routine and keep it cool with Manscaped. Head to manscaped.com and use OnTexas, all caps, for 20% off plus free shipping. Let's make this summer sizzle for all the right reasons, guys. Look, and I was out. It was a rough day in Jacksonville yesterday morning. It was hot. The bugs were everywhere. I literally thought the only guy sweating more than me in the state of Florida was Billy Napier when he looks at his schedule every morning. That's how hot I was. And I didn't have the hot seat underneath me, guys. So that makes the Crop Preserver Anti-Chafing Ball Deodorant very important here for those sunny beach days and barbecue parties. Don't leave home without the Crop Preserver Anti-Chafing Ball Deodorant. Let the sun see you shine, not sweat. I needed it yesterday.
Hey, my dad and mom, by the way, got to say this, coming right off of that, they were sweating it out yesterday in Houston with no power. No power. My dad said, we're getting out of here. They drove up to see my aunt, and guys, if you're out there right now in the Houston area, I want to mention this, and sweating like Jerry was yesterday in Jacksonville, please find a friend, go get some AC, find a way to do it. Hopefully they start getting more power to you guys down in Houston.
Okay, guys, we got some super chats here that we need to knock out. And Just the Dude, thank you, Just the Dude. He says, Arch for college football 25 was great for Texas. I know we touched on this at the opening. We've had a lot of people join, though. I mean, there's no way you can spin it. I think that was huge for the Longhorns.
Well, I just think he's not even the starting quarterback.
Yeah. This was crazy.
That's kind of why I wanted to bring this up. He's not the starting quarterback yet. Quinn Ewers is, and is going to be a first-round draft pick, right?
And Quinn Ewers is on the cover of the thing.
Is on the cover of the thing. And so the reason I thought that was so interesting is when you just think about, we talked about this, but the channel wasn't nearly as big back when Arch Manning committed to Texas, right? I said that was $100 million recruitment for the university that won that recruitment. And I still 100% believe that, Bobby. I mean, jersey sales, notoriety. He's going to start 2 or 3 years. No, he's not going to be a one-year player and gone. That's not going to happen. If anybody thinks that, they haven't. Go watch the Book of Manning or something. It's not happening. Okay. It's a 2 or 3 year starting process. Could even be 3, knowing that family. I'm not ruling it out. But just think of the reach that's going to have for Texas, University of Texas, Texas football in the future, if he's a really good player, which we all expect him to be. Just the Mannings at the games in Austin, everything that comes along with that family. That was and I talked to Bobby, other people in our industry, that was $100 million recruitment in reality is what that was. And that's, to me, yesterday was the first time you really saw why.
Look, I think about it, and somebody has asked about Paul Feinbaum and his comment about Arch being the starter at the end of the year. Paul on this show yesterday, by the way, walked that back and said, look, it was late in the day and I made a mistake, et cetera. He didn't really mean it that way, is what he said. And it was taken out of context and he misspoke. So first of all, kudos to Paul for actually saying, hey, I made a mistake. Jerry, you and I have made mistakes in what we've said before too. But there's that. But as far as, football, it's what Paul Feinbaum said. They're the first family of college football.
Yeah.
That's how he described the Mannings. And he's right. And you know what? Everybody realizes he's right. And so not only us, but EA Sports, who has let's be clear, who has a venture that is highly dedicated to college sports, not only went out and got Eli Manning to promote it, but got Arch Manning to promote it and make money off of it as well. So you can't underestimate what that will mean. The question again is, will Texas capitalize on it on the field and off? And I think they've done it a little bit so far off the field. I want to see them recruit even better. We'll see where Steve Sarkisian takes it from here. They've got a number of big-time receivers still on the board, and those guys are going to be playing with Arch Manning. Like somebody asked me the other day, well, why is DeCorey Moore, did KJ Lacey not doing well at the Elite 11 have any impact on DeCorey Moore? The answer is no, because DeCorey Moore is gauging Arch Manning because that's who he's going to be playing with, not the current quarterback class, right? And so I want to see how Texas finishes with these receivers right now because Arch should be a huge selling point, no doubt.
Look, Matt, I was talking to Jamie French yesterday for an extended period of time. The two guys that were mentioned most that are impactful in his recruitment for Texas are Ryan Wingo and Arch Manning and Cedric Baxter. Those are the three he mentioned. And by the way, I think Quinn helped Sark with portal wide receiver recruiting. I know people want to tie it to high school kids. See what happens in the portal.
There's no doubt Quinn helped with portal recruiting.
No doubt.
Hey, what's interesting is you just mentioned three guys that were impactful for Jamie French. You realize all three guys you mentioned were out of state?
Yep.
Ryan Wingo, Missouri, Arch Manning, Louisiana, Cedric Baxter, Orlando, Florida.
And Cedric Baxter's the one that's in contact with him the most, by the way, which is expected. Cedric does a great job of kind of helping recruit those Florida kids for Texas and staying in contact with those kids, especially I think the offensive guys, right? The guys he identifies with. But Cedric Baxter's doing a good job there.
Guys, a few more super chats here. This one from Jack. Thank you as always, Jack. We appreciate it. He said, Rod, CJ, and Aaron had a great conversation last night about the defensive backroom class being better because of higher football IQs. How important is football IQ by position group?
Ooh, by position group.
Huge.
That's
well, football IQ and instincts are two different things. So let's separate instincts. The two most instinctive positions in football for me are running back and linebacker. Inside linebacker and running back. Two extremely instinctive positions. Football IQ, huge. Absolutely huge. Defensive back, huge. I think tight end, wide receiver. I think all those positions just huge at. And it's also the same in basketball IQ. People just think UConn had a ton of talent the last 2 years in basketball. Yes, they did. But look at a kid like Cam Spencer they got out of the portal. Look at his basketball IQ. It's off the charts. So football IQ, huge, Bobby, at almost every position, but instincts at a couple of positions even outweigh football IQ.
Wow. How important are they position-wise? Well, I think quarterback is a combo of instincts and football IQ, to Jerry's point, right? How do you feel the pressure? That's not football IQ. That's feel. That's instinct, right? Yeah. How do you diagnose what's happening before the play? Have you seen it before? That's more IQ. So I think quarterback is a big one. I think running back is primarily instinct as opposed to IQ. I think interior defensive line is more football instincts. I think linebacker, middle linebacker in particular, is more instincts.
Yeah.
I think the further you get away from the ball, maybe the bigger IQ turns into it. Like, I'll tell you right now, Xavier Worthy, I was watching one of the shows last night that they had one of the NFL shows, and they had Xavier Worthy popping off the 4.21 40 or whatever. And by the way, Xavier Worthy got engaged yesterday. Congratulations to him. But what I would say to y'all is Xavier Worthy had a very high football IQ. He was not just a speed guy. He had a very, very high. And the further you get away from the ball, I think more IQ matters.
Mm-hmm.
High IQ offensive linemen matter. There's no doubt, especially on the interior, by the way.
Yes.
Like guard, center guard, high IQ guys, they stunt a lot of blitzes. They see a lot of stuff. They've seen it before. That matters. I agree with that. The further you get away from the ball, though, largely, I think the more IQ matters. That's like Jahdae Barron is a perfect example. Good athlete, not an overwhelming athlete, right? Not an overwhelming speed guy, at least not since he's had this toe injury or foot injury. But from an IQ perspective, pretty freaking high. Okay. I think that we'll see what Cade Phillips and Caleb Chester and those guys bring to the table too. Maybe a Nathan Tillman. By the way, we need to mention Nathan Tillman, a young man out of Timberview that we've been talking about quite a bit. He put out his top 3 yesterday, Jerry. It was Texas, TCU, and Utah, which is very similar to the top 3 of linebacker Jonathan Cunningham, who announces on Friday. Same 3 teams for him as well.
A few other super chats while we're on the subject of recruiting here now. Slick Rick says, do we lose Terry if Townsend commits? I thought Terry would be the perfect athletic speed tight end. Also, can you give details on the playoffs, bye weeks, wild card, etc.? So let's start with the first part of that question, Jerry, when it comes to Michael Terry.
Tough to answer that. I mean, Michael Terry really has to decide what he wants to be, what he's willing to be as a player. And it's offense is what he prefers, which is fine. But then what does he want to be? Does he want to go try to play a running back at Iowa? I mean, at Oregon? That won't happen long term. Does he want to go play wide receiver at Nebraska and catch passes from Dylan Raiola? Could he do it? Sure. Is that his highest upside? Arguable. Does he stay closer to home with the A&M of Texas pitch of, we love you as an athlete? On offense, it could probably be tied in. On defense, it's going to be an edge rush position. Again, if you don't want to play defense, you prefer offense, you aren't going to magically become a defensive player. So he has to decide what he wants to be, first of all. Really, truly what he wants to be. And what he wants to be, I think, is where he should go. Because I think that's very important with these kids is now you need some guidance. You need people to have real conversations with you. But he wants to be an offensive player. So it's going to come down to those conversations. So if Nick Townsend commits to Texas and Amari Winston's in the class and Michael Terry and the people around him say, you know what, you could be a really good tight end down the line. It's probably not great for Texas. Does it knock him out? I'm not saying that, but Texas would have 2 guys committed already. But if he's just going as an athlete, as an offensive player, and takes the conversation of figure it out once you get there, then I think all bets are off. But he's got to decide really what he wants to try to be. I think that's going to be very impactful in his decision.
And before we get to the second part of that question, guys, I'm going to tell folks out there about Chubby's, our newest sponsor. They're a staple in my household between me and my sons. We love them. We love their looks. We love how stylish they are. Chubby's has crafted the most comfortable clothing with the most unique designs ever. And I mean that. For a limited time, Chubby's is giving our listeners 20% off of your order with our exclusive code. All you have to do is just use promo code ONTexas at chubbyshorts.com. and you get that 20% off. When it comes to true style and comfort in the form of men's shorts, you literally cannot do better than Chubby's iconic original stretch shorts. They're available in 4-inch, 5.5-inch, and 7-inch inseam lengths. It's all depending on how much of those beautiful thighs that you're willing to show off and wanting to show off. They put Chubby's on the map for a reason. And of course, you compare the original stretch shorts with Chubby's lineup of Friday shirts, and now you're cooking with all gas and no breaks. So just head on over, chubbyshorts.com, use promo code ONTexas. Like I said, they're going to give you that 20% off, and you can't beat that. Don't just blend in with the crowd, stand out with Chubby's. And like I said, on Monday, we went school clothes shopping. It seemed like everything that was going in that basket was Chubby's shorts. So big believer in them. I want to thank them for sponsoring. Okay, guys, the other part of that question here from Slick Rick about the details on the playoffs. And I don't know what details specifically, but
this is good. Can you send that? Put that link in the chat. Make a link and send that to the chat so that everybody has a copy of it, Blake. Yeah. Basically, the 4 teams that win their conferences of the 4 major conferences get a bye and host the first game. Is that accurate? I believe they host that round of 8. The playoff seeds, so 5 and 12, 8 and 9, 11 and 6, 10 and 7. The home team gets a home game.
Yes,
is my understanding. And in the playoff quarterfinals, they get a home game. Then you have the semifinals and the national championship, which are play-ins for all of those. If you see the higher seeded team hosts. Oh, wait a minute. So I got it wrong. In the first round, the higher seed hosts.
Yeah, no, you had it.
Round are bowl games. The semifinals, another bowl game, and then the finals will be in Atlanta this year at Mercedes-Benz. So actually, if you win your conference, you don't necessarily get a home game. You go to a bowl.
Right.
My apologies. Good stuff.
There you go. All right. And then a few other super chats, as I said, and we're going to do these two together because they're both about the Corey and Moore. This first one from Jay Lee. He says, Sark talks about culture fits, but guys like the Corey and Moore could be into cat juggling. We would still take anyone that talented, right? And then I'm going to add this one too, guys. Matt says, do you think the Corian would have still committed to Oregon if he waited longer to choose a school instead of picking right after his visit, riding that high?
To answer the first question, yes, of course. And by the way, for those that I know that people are mad because a kid commits somewhere else, just because he committed somewhere else doesn't mean he's not a culture fit at Texas.
You don't put jerk or any of that other stuff.
Texas, you know how you knew he was a culture fit at Texas? How much they put in this visit. Okay, they wouldn't have done that if he wasn't. But yes, the answer to that is yes, absolutely. That second question is he just wanted to do something different.
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think it could have helped Texas. Obviously, wouldn't have hurt Texas if he would have waited longer, since he committed to Oregon. Right, it wouldn't hurt Texas for him to have waited longer. But we'll see what happens at the end of the day with him. I don't like the comment of cat juggling, and I just want to say this: one of my big bugaboos in life, like things that I hate more than life itself sometimes, is any kind of animal harm. Man, I am not into those people.
Bobby would have jumped in front of Bevo to save the bulldog.
No, I would not. But I know it is. Jay, I've seen it. I've seen the jerk. I know Steve Martin. My point is, I just can't. It still gets me. It's one of those ones that, like, I wouldn't want Michael Vick to be a Longhorn. I'll put it that way.
There you go.
Don't care how good he is.
We're going to take some more questions here. And I like this question. I'm curious to get y'all's answer. It's from EQM. He says, good morning from Rockford, Illinois. Who's the most underrated opponent on Texas' schedule this season?
There'll be a couple people that say Colorado State first game up. No, let's see.
Kentucky. I'm convinced of that after talking to Paul a little bit yesterday, and also Tony Barnhart, Jerry, over the weekend. They have a lot of respect for Mark Stoops at Kentucky. Now, you don't know what they're going to be with their quarterback and all this other stuff, but they are going to play hard-nosed football and be a difficult out for everybody.
Yeah,
that's how they've made their way in the SEC. So I would say Kentucky is the one that people are discounting too much.
That's funny, Patrick Page. Look, I think there's 3 teams that deserve to be in that conversation. That's Kentucky, Florida, and Texas A&M. And I know that won't be popular with A&M, but whatever. And we talked about Kentucky. The thing that worries, if I'm a Kentucky fan, the thing that worries me a little this year, Deone Walker stud, linebacker from Georgia stud, receivers, best receiver core they've had. Barian Brown, really good. The running back that transferred him from Ohio State, really good player. Good on the offensive line. But they are unsettled at quarterback. The last 2 years, they've been more settled. That's going to be interesting with that team this year. Florida, more talent than given credit for in their roster. See what they look like by the time they get to Austin. But experienced quarterback, Eugene Wilson's a stud at wide receiver. They got him a little more help at wide receiver, which means Mertz has more help. The question I have, and they're going to have good players, good athletes on defense. The question I have for Florida, their offensive line guys they got out of the portal, I'm not sure they're as good as they thought they were. So what's that offensive line going to look like, especially as the season moves along? That's going to be a key for Florida. I think they have good talent. Then A&M, Connor Weigman's healthy and plays like a first-round pick with Mike Elko coaching defense. If their offensive line holds up, they'll be better than people think.
If they don't have injuries. A&M can't. They're not deep enough right now to handle injuries. And not many teams are, don't get me wrong, but A&M is thinner than most at this point, even though I think they have high-end talent across the board, basically. I mean, I love their running back room. They got tremendous running backs. Reuben Owens is really, really talented.
A lot of people saying UTSA.
Yeah.
You have to play well. You can't play a C game against those guys. Now, I will say this about UTSA. We got into discussion a few weeks ago, Rod Babers. I think, Bobby, you were on that live stream. Texas is so much, because everybody references the game a couple of years ago, but Texas is so much more talented now than they were at that time. I think there's a chance that Texas kind of overwhelms UTSA as that game moves along, more so than they could 2 years ago. I
would agree with that.
Play well. They'll be coached well. They'll be put in position to maximize everything they have. But Texas, talent-wise, is a different team now than they were 2 years ago.
The one thing that I would say about that UTSA game that gives me some pause is that it's similar to the Wyoming game of a year ago. You go on the road for a big matchup against Michigan, just like Texas went on the road for a big matchup against Alabama. You come back, you know that the intensity level is going to be different, right? Than going to Michigan or going to Alabama. You know, they'll have to match that, because you got to remember Texas was tied with Wyoming going into the fourth quarter last year. Now, it didn't end up being a close game, but the reality of it is that kind of mental letdown. I don't think you'll see it, though, this year as much with a third-year starter at quarterback. That's another element to watch for.
Derek has
shouldn't be as much up and down with a third-year starter at quarterback that's seen so many different looks on defense or from a defense.
Hey, Derek had a good question you started on Lance Jackson.
Yeah. Will Lance Jackson get looks at defensive tackle? Seems to have the ability to add the weight to play there, and we need bodies.
I think he is, and I'm not saying he's this good, but Julius Peppers, frame-wise, stayed on the edge. I think you're going to see a Lance Jackson with a similar frame stay on the edge. Now, at 285 pounds, can he move inside on third downs? And Rod likes to call the NASCAR package. Not out of the question. But I think, especially in the SEC, that guy's an edge player all the way for Texas, unless he balloons and gets to 320, which probably isn't good for him, by the way. I think he's an edge player. I think Texas has 2 tremendous edge prospects in this class, by the way.
He is a prototypical strong side defensive end. I mean, you don't draw him up better than Lance Jackson. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
And some super chats that we need to knock out, fellas. This first one here from Justin. He says, any updates on what we should expect with Johnson, Cunningham, and Hines committing soon? Also, Townsend seems good.
I think Kelshawn Johnson's a little more up in the air than he was. And I'm not saying he's going Texas way, because I know everything I say, people run with it. But I think he's been an A&M lean for the last couple of weeks. But I think it's a little more conflicted now than it was. So we'll see what happens with Kelshawn Johnson. I honestly can't predict it because I'm not sure he knows. I think that's where it's at right now. I think he has had a pretty good idea 2 weeks prior. Jonathan Cunningham, that's going to come down to, does he think he can play earlier and see the field quicker at Utah and TCU versus Texas? I think that's pretty simple, cut and dry with that recruitment. If that's what he chooses, it won't be Texas. Because I think Texas, from a football athletics academic standpoint, is the favorite there. But it's how willing is he to wait a little bit and develop, because he's a 190, 192-pound guy. It's going to take him some time physically to get ready to play in the SEC. So that's going to come down to, I think, the way he's thinking about football early in his college career. Tanook Hines, total wild card. Notre Dame, I think, has recruited him harder than anybody else, him and his family. USC is attractive. His brother's out at Hawaii playing, so there's some West Coast there. Texas has had good discussions with him and his family of late. A&M could swoop in with a late offer. Doesn't mean they get him, but they can offer to at least muddy the waters a little bit. But it's so interesting, because now that Kelshawn's date is backed up again, A&M may not know what Kelshawn's doing until after Tanook announces. So many of these things are timing, what we're looking at with all these commitments. I do, and I said earlier in the show, and I believe this, Kelshawn, Tanook, Dalen McCutcheon, if one of those guys wanted to commit, Texas would take a commitment from those guys. Not all 3 guys, but they would take a commitment from one of those 3 guys if somebody jumped on board right now. That I can say.
What about Nick Townsend? Does Texas still feel good there?
Heard nothing different there. I think Texas is in a pretty good spot. I think the main thing there is the main thing I'm looking for is, does the opinion of the colleges change with him at all? Because I think the colleges recruiting him think Texas is in a pretty good spot. Does that change here in the next 5 days, 3 days leading up to his decision?
And then our next super chat is from Rhett. He says, as an Austin native, we have, I think, 6 players on the defensive rotation from Austin. I'm talking about Baron Burke, Michael Taff, Andrew Makuba, Vosick, and Collins. No way that ever happens again. What do y'all think about that?
Austin Westlake had that special group of kids come through. I mean, you think about it, man, Taff obviously was a walk-on, but Ethan Burke, who was a lacrosse player turned football player, right? So you had a special circumstance in there. Vosick, obviously, father was the D-line, is the D-line coach there. Then you had the offensive lineman, Connor Robertson. They had a pretty Klubnik at quarterback. They had a special group come through there, probably Dodge's best team at Westlake, right? I think most Westlake fans would say that. Will they have that talent match again in back-to-back classes is my question at Westlake. That was a very, very talented team with a lot of really good football players. So are they going to have that back-to-back in classes again? That's what I can't answer right now. I don't think it's out of the question that Texas has 6 players from the Austin area again, because the area is growing. Now, a lot of people moving in don't grow up with Texas jerseys on. But I think as long as Texas is a really good team, I could see 6 guys from Austin on the Texas team again, Bobby. I don't think it's out of the question.
Well, I'm thinking they have the defensive tackle down in Bastrop. that Texas apparently likes. Tiki Hola, I believe is his name, right, Jerry? He's a 2026. I think there's a player up in Pflugerville that they've looked at.
20 tight end. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. The tight end. I don't know. This is a fair question, or a really good question. That seems like an anomaly to me. It doesn't seem normal. We'll see what ends up happening over the next couple of years, but I don't think that, as Texas has looked outside its state more too, that's a part of the situation. I'm interested. I didn't even think about. First of all, that was a good question because I didn't even realize that there were 6 guys from the Austin area in the 2 deep there in the defensive rotation. So that's a good note. I don't know that that's going to happen anytime soon, based on what I'm seeing from a recruiting perspective right now, unless there are numbers out there that there's a DB somewhere that I'm unaware of or something like that.
And the portal is the big thing there for me too. It may not come from high school, but you got a corner from Pflugerville Weiss, Jason Stokes. He's going to Utah, I believe. Pretty good player. In 2 years, kind of some of those kids are going to go elsewhere right now. But could the portal have an impact there? Could there be
like Makuba?
Two guys. Yeah. Because there's definitely more talent in the Austin area than there ever has been.
Yeah, I think without a doubt. All right, Bobby, why don't you tell folks out there about Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm one last time?
Yeah, absolutely. Adam and his group have been helping injured Texans for more than 2 decades now out of their Austin office, but they go statewide. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, motorcycle accident, even an ATV, and want a free consultation, they'll talk to you on the phone, take you through what the whole process looks like, and talk to you about it, as well as gauge whether or not they think you might have a claim. Call them. Visit them at loweylawfirm.com. That's loweylawfirm.com. Thanks, Adam, for your support of Coffee and Football on Wednesdays.
Hey, guys, we got time for just a few more questions here. We also have a couple of super chats that we need to knock out. A couple of them are comments. Jack, thank you, Jack, again. He says, Blake, at my age, anything I wear can be considered chubbies. That's a good one, Jack. And then Slick Rick says, Bobby, Jerry, lunch with your Mark or Vic? Y'all been getting lots of lunch questions this week.
I actually wouldn't mind having lunch with Brett Yormark because I want to see how many times he says the name Bill Self in an hour. What's the over-under on that? 275 and a half?
I wonder if Brett Yormark refers to himself in the third person.
Probably.
Yeah.
And then our last super chat here from AJ. Thank you, AJ. He says, what's the latest with French and Lockett? Obviously, Jerry, you were there with French yesterday, but what's going on with those two?
I think things look really good with Jamie French. He's going to visit Georgia officially right now. That's what he's planning to do the last weekend in July. August 30th decision. It's not changing. That's his mom's birthday. That won't change. I think Texas continues to be in a really good spot there. I think they've done a really good job in that recruitment. Again, Wingo, Arch, Cedric Baxter, all influential from a player perspective, but really it's the offensive scheme. It's getting away, doing something different. For out of Florida, these things work both ways. It's funny how that does work both ways sometimes. Khalil Lockett, more of a wild card. I hear more A&M and Alabama right now with him. I think Texas is in it. Texas had some good conversations with him and his family members this week within the last 48 hours. But where will that one go? I'm not sure right now. I hear more Alabama and more A&M. But I think if he comes out with a top 3 at some point, it wouldn't surprise me if those weren't the 3, barring where other guys commit at that position before his August 7th announcement. Because I think timing, where guys commit, where guys look like they're going to go, it can be impactful in this recruitment.
And then Kelly horns up. This will probably be the last one for today, fellas. Which game is most important for Texas to win? Oklahoma, Michigan, A&M, or Georgia? And why?
I think it's Michigan. And from a football perspective, season perspective, I think it's Michigan. Because if you beat Michigan, you can drop a couple of SEC games and still go to the playoff. If you lose that Michigan game, week 2, that puts a lot of pressure on you to get in the 12-team playoff. You don't have as much wiggle room. So I think from a pure season football perspective, if you beat Michigan, that gives you a little wiggle room in the SEC where you could drop a couple of games and 10-2, you're in the playoff. If you lose that game, that means you probably can only lose one game in the SEC and feel good about your chances, unless you go to the championship game.
You want me to answer that?
Yes.
I just want them to go 2-0 against OU and A&M. So I understand what Jerry's saying, and probably logically he's right.
Right.
But in your gut, Texas needs to beat OU for sure, and the A&M game is going to be huge.
I think
it is a lot of people are saying, oh, well, it gives them the edge for in-state players and this sort of stuff. Yes, that's true. And there's that. You also want to, you want to stub Mike Elko out of the gate if you're Steve Sarkisian.
No doubt.
You want to do that so that he doesn't really get that launch pad game for himself, or launch pad season. So I want, OU and A&M are both for me. I understand what you mean by Michigan. You're probably right. Georgia, I don't think is going to happen. But that's why they play the game too. But OU and A&M, and let's see where everything else sits.
Yeah, and from an emotional standpoint, I would actually put A&M over Oklahoma. And I know after a loss to Oklahoma last year, 60% of fans may disagree with that. But to Bobby's point, if you go into A&M and win the first year Texas in the SEC, that's heart ripper outer.
That's why did we build this stadium type? That's their that'll be a little bit of their.
And if maybe that makes A&M run to the Big Ten, which would be a monumentally bad decision.
No, they're going to go to Brett Yormark back to the Big 12 and America's best conference, apparently.
Buzz Williams,
it's the best.
Buzz Williams won't want any of that. Buzz Williams would be like, no, don't take me to the Big 12.
Oh, man. All right, guys. Well,
anything to avoid the Longhorns, baby.
That's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football. We want to thank Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm for sponsoring today's show, along with Chubby's and Manscaped. Bobby, tell folks how they can become an OTF OG before we get out of here.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love you to join us over on ontexasfootball.com. Become an OG by subscribing to our annual package subscription, $39.95 for 1 year. All you have to do is use the coupon code OTFOG. Apply the code, and you'll get On Texas Football for just $39.95 a year. It's normally $59.95, $20 off by using that promo code. Once again, on TexasFootball.com. Jerry, myself, CJ, Blake, we're all over there each and every day answering questions, talking about the Longhorns in multiple sports, actually. Blake and CJ are killing it in baseball right now. If y'all like baseball news, I think that On Texas Football actually may be the best place anywhere for baseball news right now on the Longhorn interwebs.
Yeah, and we have basketball questions, occasional off season. I got a story up on OTF on basketball, a report from some of the summer workouts as well. A lot of basketball excitement in the facility right now, guys.
Hey, you think it's warranted, right? Like last year, they were kind of worried about not getting the right players in the portal. You feel like they're actually getting the right players a little bit this year?
I think they're much. I think Frank Haith is really, really good at evaluating offensive basketball players. Not that Rodney Terry, Steve McClain, those guys, but I think Frank Haith, that's his wheelhouse and always has been. I think he's done, him and Ogden, Chris Ogden, the GM, have done and Rodney and the whole staff, but Frank's really good in offensive basketball evaluation-wise. I think they have put together a pretty good offensive group of players. The guards, I think, are much, much better. We talked about football IQ earlier, basketball IQ, understanding how to play the game, from what I'm being told by a couple of people I really trust, has gone up exponentially from last year's team.
Two things real quick before we get out of here. Anthony says, did I miss any baseball talk? We didn't talk much about baseball or any about baseball today. I do expect some more stuff to happen for Texas, but CJ and I put out a video a day or two ago that will get you caught up. And then, of course, Texas got a couple of pitcher commitments from the JUCO ranks over the last 48 hours, but more to come there. And then, Jerry, a lot of people want to know if you're going to have an interview with French and when that'll be out.
Should be up at some point today, if not tomorrow. But that's being our fabulous editor, producer, Matthew, is doing his good work on that. And whenever that's ready, it will be published.
There you go. All right, guys. Well, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell so you're notified anytime that we go live or post a video. As Bobby said, head on over to ontexasfootball.com. Use promo code OTFOG to get that full year for just $39.95. And for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.